Welcome back. Thanks for saddling up again for a short ride with the stud. Got another good one for you. We're going to show you something totally different than what we have been showing you. We're going to get into another series. We've got all these different types of series, long episodes, different episodes, one after another. These are Stud Stories series from the Stud Stories series. I think this is number 47, if I'm correct. This one is about one of the greatest characters in my estimation in the history of wrestling. We're going to talk a little bit about Ron Wright. You're going to hear a story about Ron Wright here. Has to do with my dad. A lot involved in it. We're wrestling in one of the most dangerous cities in the history of professional wrestling, I guess, up in the mountains of Kentucky. We're in Harlan, Kentucky. And what a wild night it was. Rather than try to tell you about it, I'm going to let you take a look at it. This one is fairly long. You're going to get a little bit of a little taste of what it was like to wrestle in that part of the world. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another Stud Story. I think I got a good one for you today. This one is going to be somewhat about quite a few people, different people. My studcast at this point, we're in the area, I'm in the area of 275, 276. Some of the latter studcasts that I have done, and in these studcasts, my father was wrestling some with myself and my brother down in the southeastern Gulf Coast territory in these last few studcasts. And then I even did a little bit on my dad at the end of one of those studcasts when I had a fan that asked a learning tree question about it. So, and I got to start this out by saying that my dad, after wrestling with us in '78, he went home and he kind of got back into wrestling again. He hadn't wrestled in quite a while. And when I went back to Knoxville, which is going to be about November of 1978, I had been 7 months basically in southeastern Gulf Coast down there in Alabama and the Florida Panhandle. I went back to Knoxville, and Dad called me up and he says, "You know, Ron, I never got to wrestle in Harlan, Kentucky." And he goes, "I always wanted to go wrestle in that town." And he goes, "I know you run it." And he goes, "Would you book me on a Harlan show?" And I said, "Well, okay, Dad, sure, I'll book you on Harlan." You know, and so Harlan happened to be running about 2 Saturday nights later. We ran it every other Saturday night. So Dad comes and we drive up to Harlan, Kentucky, just me and him. And when we gets there, we're wrestling in a tag match with the Mongolian Stomper. Dickie Steinborn was wearing a mask as the gladiator, and they were managed by Ron Wright. And now Ron Wright got to that town by flying his airplane. And I've told some stories, quite a few stories about Ron Wright's airplane. And Ron Wright flew his airplane from Kingsport, Tennessee into Harlan, Kentucky. And as with all these airports in Kentucky, it was set right on the top of a mountain, the highest mountain around Harlan. And they would just flatten out the tops of the mountain, and that's where your landing strip was, on the top of the mountain. So he had come in his airplane. And so my dad, during the course of the night, as soon as we got there, and once he found out who we were working with, as always, he wanted to do all these high spots. He loved to do high spots with guys. So he went over and spent probably 20 minutes with the Stomper and the gladiator, Dick Steinborn, working out all these high spots he was going to do during the tag match to get himself over and to have a good time. And the fans really loved that stuff too. So on TV, this happened to be on a Saturday, we did a television program that day. I was on TV with the Stomper in the match, and Dick Steinborn got involved in the match. Obviously, he was wearing a mask as a gladiator, and they hurt my arm in the match. So that night we went to Harlan, and Dad sit there and he got his high spots all ready, and we got ready and we went to the ring. Me and Dad against the Mongolian Stomper and the Gladiator, managed by Ron Wright. And he wanted to start the match because he wanted to do his high spots. But I kept saying, no, Dad, let me go in and just do a little bit, and then I'll give you a kind of a hot tag, and you can come in and really bust the house up. Oh, okay, finally he says, all right, go ahead, kid. So I went out and I locked up with the gladiator, Dick Steinborn. He shoved me back into the corner. Mongolian Stomper grabbed my left arm, started twisting it around the rope, and the gladiator started kicking me in the arm, and I went down on my face. We had been in the ring for about no longer than a minute, and we had a riot. And here they came. I mean, they came from everywhere. Fans came from all four sides of the ring. It was just like instantaneous. They weren't going to deal with them getting to my arm again after what had happened on TV that day, and they'd all seen it. So they came, and obviously Steinborn and Stomper started kicking them off the apron, and Dad's running around the ring, and he's screaming, I ain't done my high spots! I ain't done my high spots! Because he sees that this is over, we ain't going to have a match, this is it. We're going to be lucky if we get out alive, right? And so then a policeman jumps in the ring, and this I'd never seen before. The policeman was so excited and so scared about what was going on that he jumped in the ring, and I had Dick Steinborn backed up in the corner, trying to keep him away, keeping the marks off of him. And when they would jump on the apron to try to get to him, I would kick them with my feet, either stomp on their fingers or enough that it wasn't obvious I'm trying to protect Gladiator, but I'm trying to keep them off of him. Dad and Stomper are throwing people out of the ring, and the referee, it's pandemonium, okay? The building's just going nuts. And cop jumps in the ring, he pulls out his gun. And I was like, oh my God, what is he doing? And he goes right to Dick Steinborn. And I'm pushing some guy off the apron, and I turn around and look, he's got that gun stuffed in Dick Steinborn's belly. And he's saying, if you move, I'm going to blow your guts out. Right? Well, and that's a bad deal, man. I mean, these policemen, they're fans too. And they didn't like these wrestlers. They didn't like the heels, So I'm like, I got to do something. So I run over and I kind of push the officer over out of the way a little bit, just enough I can hit Steinborn with a punch. And I throw a big punch and hit him across the chest, and it slaps real hard, and the policeman drops his gun on the mat right in front of us, me and Steinborn. We both look down. There's the policeman standing there, and the gun's laying on the mat. And Dick reaches down with his foot, and he kicks it out in the crowd. Now, Ron Wright's been on the floor. He's been fighting his way on the floor. He had to get up inside the ring, too, at the same time. And he kind of sees what's going on over there in the corner, and he watches that gun go out in the crowd. And he screams as loud, I could hear him above all the roar. He goes, I'm gone. That's it. I'm gone. And he went right straight toward the dressing room. When he did, Steinborn hit the floor, so did the Stomper hit the floor. Several other policemen that were still there, they kind of got in front, and they got him back to the dressing room. Okay, so it was a heck of a riot. 30 seconds into a match, Dad never got in the ring, made all the trip from across the state, came a 2-hour drive to Harlan, all the way home. I'd hear him, dog, I never get to I can't believe it. I've tried all these years, I never got to do nothing, I was like, well, Dad, it's all right. What am I going to do about it, I'm trying to apologize for us having a riot and him not being able to do his thing. Anyway, 2 days later, on a Monday. We don't wrestle on a Sunday. On a Monday, we're in a town in which we didn't have them very often, but all the guys were in the same dressing room. They had in 2 different doors, so baby faces went out of one door, heels went out of the other. And Ron Wright comes over and he sits down by me. And he's kind of got his head down. And he goes, Ron, did you hear about what happened to me Saturday night? And I said, no, I didn't. What happened to you, man? He goes, well, I flew my plane into Harlan. And he goes, I never flew into Harlan before. And he said, I landed on, one of them Kentucky mountains, because I'd been on a flight with him into Bluefield, and I knew exactly what he's talking about. dangerous place to have an airport anyway. He said, I flew my plane into Harlan and I chalked my wheels down there on her, and then I come on down, they come pick me up, policeman brought me over here to the match, and he said, we had that riot the other night, and he said, it's hot, Ron, he said, oh, we're getting maybe too much heat on me. And I said, well, Ron, that's good, isn't it? I mean, gosh, we're selling out, and you're over like crazy. Well, I may be too over, Ron. I said, well, how's that? And he goes, well, he said, after the match, he said, I had that cop riding me back out there to my plane. And he said, I got out there and I looked and my plane was gone. I said, what do you mean your plane was gone? He goes, my plane was gone, Ron. I couldn't see my plane. It's disappeared. And I said, well, how can that happen? He said, that's what I was thinking. He said, I looked down there at the end of the runway, and he said, there was some smoke coming up. He said, how the airports are is on the top of the mountain. He said, the smoke was coming up, and he said, I walked down there. He said, I got down there at the edge of the mountain. He said, I looked down there, and that was my plane. He said, the Sun Guns, after we had that ride, he said, they found my plane out here at the airport. They shoved it all the way down that runway off the top of the mountain, Ron. And I said, you bet they would. They burned up my plane. I said, Ron, that's got to be a record of some kind. Who can say that they had their airplane burned up by the fans, man? He goes, I don't care. It ain't funny, Ron. He said, the plane, I ain't got no insurance on her. He said, I lost the plane to a twin-engine beautiful plane. And so that's kind of an off-the-wall story, but it actually happened in Harlan, Kentucky. I had a bad night. My dad never got in the ring, never got a chance to get to do his high spots. Ron Wright got his airplane burned up, and it's kind of what wrestling was all about back in those hills in Kentucky and up there in East Tennessee. Fans were wild, and they were mad, and they were believers. And, they had to go shove somebody's airplane off the mountain and it catches on fire and burn up. So thanks again. That's another one of the stud stories. And thank you all for your support and for keeping and watching. And we're trying to really, really build this up here in ClassicContinentalWrestling.com. Our streaming channel is just adding and we're going to be adding a lot more stud stories. And hope you come back and enjoy another one. Well, I always enjoyed telling those stories, man. Those Ron Wright stories, and I got so many of them. We're going to probably have some more of them. We'll take a little short ride with some more of those Ron Wright stories, for darn sure. And I love that one, man. It's hard to imagine that something like that really happened, but it certainly did. And I love the title of it. They burned my plane, Ron. Well, that's what happened. And great character, Ron Wright. Miss him greatly, and he's one of the best that was ever put on a pair of tights. And again, you find these on ClassicContinentalWrestling.com. There's so many different things. I think by now you're probably seeing that there's not just matches of television programs. There is all kinds of different series that you can follow on here. We're going to show you a little bit of every bit of it. It's going to take us a little while just to get through the first one and give you a taste of it all. So thank you very much for taking a short ride with the stud with me, and we're going to bring you another one.